EVE Online lets you lose a ship worth millions of IS because of a server tick you didn't know about. The gap between veteran players and new players oftentimes is not about skill points or ISK, it's about information the game never tells you. Today, I'm fixing that. I've compiled a list of the hidden mechanics, shortcuts, and systems that EVE barely whispers about. A few of these will make you question your knowledge of EVE, and at least one of them is going to save your ship by the end of this video. You know, if you watch this before the next time you undock. EVE Online is too big to explore alone. Let's explore it together. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lynn Rankin. I've spent a long time in New Eden, and I'm here to share with you what I've learned and continue to learn in this amazing game we call EVE. There's a lot of tips to cover in this video, so let's just jump right in. Let's start with undocking, because there's more going on than you might think. When you undock from a station, you're actually invulnerable for 30 seconds. This is called a locations change timer. This protection is immediately canceled the moment you activate any modules, target someone, or move your ship. In addition, you get this protection when you finish a Sino jump as well. Great for making Lancer Dreads blow their shot.
Docking permission requested.
Now, depending on how small the station's docking radius is, you could drift outside of it during that time, which means you'd have to reapproach the station just to dock back up. Here's a trick you might not know about. You can actually stop your ship using the keybind control space or clicking the minus icon on your HUD, and it will not cancel your locations change invulnerability. So as soon as you undock, start pressing control space so that way your ship stops right next to the exit. And most of the time, you're still going to be inside the docking radius, safe and sound, unless you're in what's called a kickout station. Speaking of which, not all stations are created equal. Some of these stations have an enormous docking radius. Others are pitifully small, like the station is throwing you out onto the street because you didn't pay rent that month. These are what players have called kickout stations. When you undock from any station, you leave with maximum velocity, and the docking radius in these stations is so tiny that even the control space trick is not guaranteed to stop your ship in time. More often than not, you'll end up outside the docking radius and need to reapproach the station before you can actually go back and dock. It's worth knowing which stations in your area are kickout stations before you need to dock in a hurry. I've included a resource in the description to help you build a mental image of which stations are kickouts and which ones are not, though a quick visual inspection of the dotted lights around a station should give you a clue as to the docking radius. One docking radius hugging tightly around the station typically could be trouble. Here's something to know if you plan to get into the market in EVE. Once you create a buy or sell order on the market, you cannot modify or delete it for 5 minutes. This window might not sound like a big deal, but it's more than enough time for someone to sweep in and buy your item that you listed for way below what it was actually worth. Double check your orders before you hit submit every time. You can also hover over the price that you are wanting to list your item at, and it will tell you whether it's millions, billions, or hundreds of thousands. For our players who are wanting to get started in planetary industry, this one's for you. Your planetary industry command center does not need to be connected to anything on the planet. A lot of new players automatically think they need to link this into their network, but this wastes CPU and power grid, which matters on gas giants where resources are tight when you're trying to link different structures together. Leave the command center disconnected and free up those resources for things that actually need them on your planet. Let's talk about wormholes really quick. New players may not know that wormholes don't act like stargates. While they may allow transit just like a stargate, with a stargate you can jump back and forth as many times as you want, great for taunting gankers in your slasher. Wormholes are a different story. If you jump through the same wormhole twice within 5 minutes of your first jump, you become polarized. While polarized, you cannot enter the same wormhole again until those 5 minutes are up. You can still use other wormholes that you haven't gone through yet during that window. It's just specific to that one that you are now polarized on. Keep that in mind before you try to yo-yo through a wormhole in wormhole space. You probably know about the weapons timer, the 60-second aggression timer you get for attacking a player that prevents you from docking or jumping through a Stargate until it runs out. By the way, if you have an aggression timer, you still can go through a wormhole. But there's a second timer that a lot of people don't think about in the moment, the combat timer. There are actually two versions, one for NPCs and one for players. If you get into a fight with an NPC or they just look at you in the wrong way and then log off in space without docking, your ship stays right where it was for 5 minutes. If the aggression was with a player, that time is 15 minutes. Here's why this is important. If someone has combat scan probes, they can use these to find your ship even if you logged off in a safe spot, because your ship is still physically there until either of these timers expire. Don't assume logging off makes you disappear. Not immediately, at least. And while we're on the subject of logging off in space, there's actually a hidden 60-second timer on top of all of that. Even if you have no NPC timer and no PvP combat timer, if you just log off in space without using the log off safely feature, your ship will still hang there in space for 60 seconds. That means during that 60-second window, if a player manages to scan you down in that time and shoot you, you will incur a combat timer and you're there for 15 minutes now, all while your client is closed. The log off safely function has a 30-second timer built in, and you can only use it if you are not in a fleet and you have no active NPC or combat timers. But at the end of that timer, your ship actually disappears. Use it. A 30-second wait to make sure that you are actually logged off is way better than 60 seconds of questioning. Here's a mechanic that surprises a lot of newer players and even some veteran players. For 10 seconds after you exit warp at a station, Stargate, or anywhere else, you are invulnerable, as long as you don't move or target anyone. But wait, I've been blown up by smart bombs right after landing at a Stargate. If there's invulnerability, how does that happen? The unfortunate answer is that smart bombs can hit you mid-warp. So by the time you actually exit warp and the invulnerability timer would kick in, you're already dead. The AoE damage caught you before the protection could apply. It's not a bug, it's just a nasty reality of smart bomb camps at gates. In fact, with the right bookmark setup and timing, you can actually smart bomb shuttles mid-warp. More on that in a future video, as well as reinforcing the importance of not warping directly from one gate to another. Now here's a tip that maybe some veteran players may not know about. We all know that when you jump through a Stargate, you become gate cloaked for up to 60 seconds, and as long as you don't move during that window, you stay cloaked for the full 60 seconds. Again, I'm sure you knew this. What you may not know is that in a recent patch, you can actually overheat your modules while you're in this gate cloak. Meaning you can overheat an afterburner or MWD or tank modules before you even decloak, if you need to make a mad dash back to the gate and need to tank or get some extra speed. Here's a cool little piece of game mechanic and kind of a glimpse into how Eve runs under the hood. When you jump through a Stargate and hold still, meaning you're at 0 velocity, the game treats your ship as pointing in all directions simultaneously. So if the point of interest you're trying to go to is behind your ship's model, it doesn't matter. The moment you initiate warp, the game calculates it as if you were already facing that direction. For capital ships, this actually produces a visual glitch that players have nicknamed surfing, wherein you'll see a massive capital ship warping completely sideways. It looks ridiculous, but it's entirely within the game mechanics. The same principle applies to 0 velocity in general. If you're sitting perfectly still, you can activate your micro warp drive and hold position. And when a target of opportunity appears, let's say you're running a gate camp, you can instantly accelerate in any direction without any alignment delay. Let's talk to our alpha pilots for a second. The standard cap for an alpha account is 5 million skill points worth of training. But here's something people don't always realize. By using skill injectors, you can actually accumulate up to 20.5 million skill points as an alpha character. That said, and I mean this, don't rush to buy skill points until you genuinely know what you want to do in EVE and you have excess disposable income. This game is enormous. It's not going anywhere. Form a budget, do your research, figure out your goals first, and always wait for a sale before making a purchase on skill points. Here's something for my explorer friends. When you're scanning down cosmic signatures, the vast majority of them will be located within 4 AU of a celestial object, a planet, a stargate, something along that line. This is a remnant of an old gameplay system in EVE where you had to manually move each of your probes individually rather than as a group. So cosmic signatures were usually within 4 AU to not drive people insane. However, later on, when you could move probes as a group, some signatures were added that spawn within 8 AU of a celestial. These include sleeper caches and certain types of wormholes. Knowing which signatures fall into the 8 AU range lets you scan smarter and faster. Instead of dragging your probes around all over the system at 32 AUs and then working your way down, you can focus your search intelligently and cut your scanning time in half. You can find out more about this in my exploration guide linked in the description. This one's important, and Fenris Creations, CCP, has actually addressed it in their own help documentation. CONCORD is not a protective force. They are a force of retribution. They will not prevent a crime from happening to you. They will show up afterwards and deal with the aggressor. And their arrival time is not instant. Even in a 0.9 security system, on average, this will take 5 seconds for them to respond. That's enough time for a well-coordinated ganking team to destroy a freighter or an untanked hauler. On screen, I have a list of CONCORD response times that you can pause and refer back to. Stay aware, fly appropriately tanked ships through high sec, don't autopilot, and don't assume CONCORD is going to save you. Here's something that a lot of players get wrong, including myself, and it costs them ISK in opportunity costs. You can salvage other people's wrecks without picking up a suspect timer, meaning other players can't legally attack you for it. The key distinction is this: you cannot loot what's inside the wreck or the cargo container that gets created after you salvage it. That will cause you to go suspect, but the act of salvaging itself, completely legal. If you want to be a dedicated scavenger following players around and gobbling up all their salvage, you can do it all day without any legal consequences. Keep in mind, some players might try to gank you, which would kind of be funny. So best watch when it's time to make a hasty retreat. You may have looked at Eve Workbench or even my own fits that I've posted and wondered why we would put seemingly useless modules wedged between weapons or even our mid slots or low slots. Maybe a neutralizer is between two separate sets of missile launchers. It's not useless, especially when we're talking about heat management. When you overheat modules, they take damage, and so do the modules directly adjacent to them. By placing a sacrificial dummy module between groups of weapons, you absorb some of that overflow heat. The weapons end up damaging each other slightly less, which means you can keep them overheated for longer before they burn out. This is a subtle but meaningful advantage in extended fights, and understanding this overheat mechanic will help you lay out your fits so that way you don't burn out your modules so quickly. EVE Online runs on a server tick rate of 1 tick every 2 seconds. You'll notice this if you pay close enough attention. Commands you issue tend to register within about 2 seconds. That's just the reality of server architecture. Here's where it gets interesting for PvP. If your ship's align time is faster than 2 seconds, you gain a meaningful defensive advantage. Fast locking ships, oftentimes interceptors with increased sensor resolution with implants and links, use extremely high scan resolution to catch targets quickly. But because EVE runs on a queue-based tick system, if your align speed beats someone's lock time within a single tick window, the game considers your action to have resolved first. It's not always foolproof. There's a lot of weird ping and packets to juggle around, but in most cases, a sub 2 second align time will get you out of most trouble before you're caught. You probably know that if your security status drops below -5.0, you're considered an outlaw and anyone can attack you without repercussion. But here's the part people often miss. If your security status is at -2.0 or lower, NPC police, not CONCORD, the actual faction police, will actively chase you in certain high-sec systems. The threshold depends on the system security status. For example, if you're sitting at a -3.5 system security status and you enter a system with a security level of 0.7 or higher, the police will pursue you throughout the entire solar system. By the way, your cloaking device is also disabled. That last part catches a lot of people off guard. Speaking of cloaks, you probably know that missiles are physical objects that can be destroyed with smart bombs. This is the concept behind firewalling. But here's a lesser known aspect. Missiles can actually decloak a ship. If a missile or a bomb passes within 2,000 meters of a cloaked ship, it breaks the cloak. So if you're sitting cloaked on field while a fight is happening nearby, you're not necessarily safe just because no one's targeting you. A errant volley of missiles can strip your cloak without anyone ever knowing you were there first. Here's a really quick and short one. Autopilot is almost always a bad idea. Almost. Here's one good use for it. Find a station you visit frequently and create a bookmark deep inside the docking radius of that station without hitting the actual station model. When you want to dock, set your destination to that station, warp to your bookmark, and after your warp starts, then activate your autopilot. When you drop out of warp, you'll be inside the docking radius of the station and the game will dock you almost instantly. Did you know you don't have to move your own stuff? The player-ran organization Red Frog Freight has been hauling cargo across HiSec since 2010, and they're still going strong. Rates can start as low as 2 million ISK per jump with collateral, and they also offer options of extremely high collateral items as well as low sec and select null-sec shipping. Setting up a courier contract is super straightforward, and their website at red-frog.org walks you through the whole process. Sometimes paying a professional is just the right call. Real quick, did you know that Poitot is the only name system in the Syndicate region? I'm sorry, I had to. It's tradition. Moving on. Here's something that can meaningfully shorten your skill training time if you plan carefully. Skills in EVE are tied to your character's attributes. Specifically, each skill has a primary and secondary attribute. The higher those skills are on your character, the faster that skill trains. You can adjust your attributes by going to your character page, navigating to attributes, and using a neural remap. For example, if you're planning on training a long stretch of skills that all rely on intelligence and memory, you can boost those attributes and cut your total training time significantly. You get a few free remaps early on, and after that, they become available once a year. Tools like EveMon let you build out skill plans and model the optimal attribute configuration for what you're training right now. Be very careful though. One wrong remap and you could be stuck with a suboptimal setup for a year. For most players without a specific long-term plan, keeping your attributes evenly spread is the safest move. The biology skill directly extends how long any booster lasts. Skill training boosters like Master at Arms, standing boosters like Glamorex, combat boosters like Crash, all of them. At biology level 5, your boosters last twice as long. That 7-day skill training booster, now it's 14 days, and you didn't pay a single extra ISK. Training biology to level 5 is a straightforward time investment that pays off consistently in the long run. This next one takes practice, but it's worth learning if you fly haulers. The micro warp drive cloak trick lets you enter warp from a dead stop without ever being an easy target. Here's how this works. Start aligning towards your next gate or station. Immediately activate your micro warp drive, then activate your cloak in that order. You have to do this quickly, like a millisecond apart. While the MWD is cycling, turn it off so that it doesn't repeat. Then, when your MWD is about 75% of the way done, turn off your cloak and click warp. If you time this right, when your cloak drops, you'll be at warp velocity, so you can enter warp instantly. And you were protected by your cloak this entire time you were accelerating. The only way this fails is if another ship gets within 2,000 meters of you when you activate the cloak. Practice this. In a slow hauler, it can be a difference between getting out clean or becoming a kill mail. If you didn't know, your ship's name appears on the directional scanner for all to see. That might not sound like a big deal until you realize that anyone within 14 AU of you can see it at any time if you're not cloaked. If you've never renamed a ship after boarding it, it will display your character name right next to the ship type, meaning anyone who scans in your vicinity knows instantly exactly who you are and what you're flying. Change your ship name. It's free, it takes 5 seconds, and it removes a layer of information you're giving away for no reason. But don't rename it Super Blingy Level 4 Raven, please. You probably know that if you hold the D key and click a Stargate or station while you're in warp, you'll jump or dock automatically when you exit warp. But here's something that a lot of players don't know and I didn't know until my Discord community helped me find this. If you are already in warp to one destination, you can hold the D key and click a different gate or station on your overview, one that you're not currently heading towards. Your ship will complete its current warp and then it'll immediately get back into warp towards the location that you pressed the D key on. It sounds like it shouldn't work. I didn't believe it, but it does. Great for chaining warp destinations quickly. This only works on gates and stations from my testing. You can also use Control plus Space from earlier to cancel a jump or dock mid-warp as well. Don't limit to yourself what's inside the game. The EVE community has built an incredible ecosystem of third-party tools over the years. There's Pyfa for deeper fit simulating than the in-game version, Rift for intel management and notifications, zKillboard for kill and loss history, and EveMon for skill planning and attribute optimization. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and they are all actively maintained, player-created resources that will genuinely improve how you play the game. Here's a sneaky one for the situationally aware PvP player. If you're on the same grid as an exploration player and they decloak or otherwise are visible and you watch them launch scanner probes, you can actually right-click those probes in space and bookmark them. Then you can warp directly to that bookmark almost instantly. This is helpful if you're trying to get a drop on an exploration player who decided to reveal themselves right next to you. If you're quick enough before they start scanning or warp away or cloak again, you may catch them with this trick. A common griefing and ganking tactic is to invite you to a fleet. If you accept, squadron commanders or fleet commanders in the fleet can warp you to a spot where they have a trap set up. The defense is simple. Always be in a fleet, even if it's just you. You cannot receive a fleet invitation if you're already in a fleet. Make it a habit whenever you log on if you don't already have a standing fleet to join. I have a really quick bonus one. According to FC's support page, the Hypernet, the in-game gambling feature, is the only feature that can actually be disabled on your account by your request. It's not available in certain countries, and FC will selectively disable it for you if you ask. If you found yourself spending more than you intended on Hypernet and want to remove the temptation, that option exists. And that's the list. 29 and 1 tips covering everything from mechanics most players never think about to quality of life habits that will make your life in New Eden smoother and safer. If any of these were new to you or you have a tip not mentioned in this video, drop a comment below. I'd love to know which ones caught you off guard and what we could add for a future video. Thank you again to my Discord community for helping with some of these tips. You can join using the pinned comment down below. Why don't you check out this video on screen on how to do the new Capsuleer Day scanning site, the strategic infiltration site, and how to blitz it in Astradios. Also, consider liking, subscribing, and using my creator codes in the description to show your support. And thank you to my amazing YouTube and Patreon members. And welcome to our newest members. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye now.